Welcome to the Power of Peacefulness podcast. Today we have a guest. She's a therapist who's going to be speaking about self-esteem. We all need self-esteem. So if you feel like you're lacking in this area, this podcast is for you. Could you do me a favor? If you like the episode, give it a thumbs up and also share it with someone who can benefit from it. I know this is going to resonate with a lot of you out there, so please share it. Speaking about peacefulness, I also have a freebie. So take a look at that at Sharon McLaughlin, MD/workbook. It is a workbook about peacefulness. So if you want to sit down with a pen, a pad, and this printout, go ahead and download it. I think it'll help bring calm and peacefulness into your life. Let's get started. Hey everybody, today we have Chantal Wade with us. She's a therapist and she specializes in trauma and self-esteem. She's been doing this for over 20 years. So we recently connected on Instagram. Like I always tell you guys, go out, increase your network. She also has a program that she'll speak a little about, and it's all about self-esteem. So let's get started. Chantal, this is a very interesting topic for me, and I think for many of the women out there. Yeah. What can I say? Without self-esteem, we don't have much at all. Really, it all comes from within. So let's step back a bit. I know you're a therapist, but you niche down. Like this is something that you're very passionate about. Tell us the background. How did you get into specializing in self-esteem?
Yeah. Well, first off, I knew becoming a therapist, I thought I wanted to be a teacher when I was younger because I loved to teach. And it's interesting because there's such a teaching component to therapy that I love, but there's an intimate component to it. I very quickly, I volunteered a lot when I was in university and one of the places was the Sexual Assault Center of Kingston. And having experienced sexual assault myself, there was something in that I found, and I said, this is what I want to do. I want to be a therapist. Because providing that support to people just felt like I knew I had something in me and I wanted to do this. So it was this journey that I started with trauma, but the number one symptom of trauma is low self-esteem. So to be a trauma therapist, you will see so many humans not feeling. That's the wounding that comes, is that this internal chaos we experience where we learn to not feel good about who we are. We blame ourselves. We learn to interpret what's happening around us by it being about, I'm not enough. There's something wrong with me. And that impacts how we are with everybody else around us. So this was something for me. I really wanted to, work with self-esteem and work with trauma. And of course, there's anxiety and depression and relationship challenges that all kind of goes, hand in hand when you're a trauma therapist. But then in the last couple of years, I said, you know what? I've been in the field a few decades. I really want to build a program that would work to really get at the roots of self-esteem because it really requires, it's a beast, right? It's very hard. There isn't just one tool you can give someone. It's a very holistic, integrative approach because it impacts how you think, how you feel, your nervous system, your body, how you relate to other humans. It impacts literally every waking moment of your life. And it requires being able to work with all those different pieces. And with that always comes addressing the trauma underneath it, right?
I want to take a step back. You had mentioned that you were sexually assaulted. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh, yeah. No, yeah.
I'm sorry about that.
Thank you.
I'm happy that a good thing came of it, though, that you feel very close to the people you're working with and you wanted to get out there and share your message.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I felt really, I think I've done a lot of healing around that now. So I don't feel like that's something that, that still triggers me the way that it used to when I was younger. But I think it's this work, when you start to really do that inner work over the years, that really helps moving forward. It really helps. But it does really impact how you feel about who you are and what you're about. Right. And so, yeah. Yeah.
When I think of self-esteem, I think about if you have low self-esteem, you essentially let people walk all over you because you don't know enough. You don't feel enough to stand up for yourself. And I also think it becomes your norm. Like somebody from the outside could look and be like, why is she allowing this? But inside, this is your norm. This is what you've created. So thank you for helping others as well.
Yeah. Well, I think you're raising a really good point there because I think when we think of self-esteem, we think it's about, oh, it's what I think about myself, but it's not. It's like what you feel. Like it is, and you said that, like it's how you feel. It is literally how we feel about ourselves. And so many of us will blame ourselves because we'll think, well, I'm attracting these people who aren't good for me. It's me who's attracting these people who are good for me because I don't feel good about myself. And what I say is, that's not where it started. It didn't start with you not feeling good about yourself. The reason you're drawn to these people, it's the algorithm. There's something in that feels safe because it's what you know. That person reminds you of somebody from your past. It started with your past, not with how you feel about yourself. How you feel about yourself is a symptom of your past. And the people you're drawn to that might not be good for you, or the ways that you feel in your life, is literally just your past replaying itself out in the present.
Chantal, so many people say that. It's like, what am I attracting? Why do I do this over and over again? Could we talk a little about that for the women who are listening out there, anybody listening out there?
Yeah.
What are some tips that you could provide when you see like this, when someone says to you, there's a recurring theme here, it keeps playing out like a broken record over and over again? Where do you start with them?
Well, first off, it's awareness, right? It's being able to recognize the pattern. And the most common place this really shows up is friendships and intimate relationships, right? So particularly intimate relationships, but also like friendships, these patterns will play out over and over again. And so the first is to understand what's the pattern. So if we take myself out of the equation where it's no longer about me not being enough and me being the problem and me drawing, the first step is let's look at this with curiosity and compassion. So we want to come at our awareness from a place of curiosity and compassion, not judgment, not fear, not anger at ourselves for all the ways that we're doing this wrong. But it's like, okay, so what is the actual pattern? And who does this person, like this pattern, the avatar that I'm creating, right? Like that I'm looking at right now, that I'm drawn to. Why am I so drawn to this avatar? Who does this avatar remind me of? Because inside, and then the next step was when we can understand, oh, this avatar, there's some part of me that feels safely drawn to this person who reminds me of my father, my mother, my sister, that childhood teacher, that kid who told me I'm ugly, right? That avatar, I'm drawn to that because the brain loves what it already knows. Just like I'm on my phone, I use this example a lot. If I'm on my phone Googling dog videos, I'm a dog mama. I love dogs. So if I'm like, ooh, dog videos, my phone is just full of dog videos. But on my business page, I needed to teach the algorithm no longer to go for dog videos and to actually look for things on and show me stuff on self-esteem. So I had to retrain. But first I had to be like, oh, wow, I'm constantly looking for dog videos because that's what I know. It's what feels safe. It's what's comfortable. But we want to retrain it. And so that means nurturing that part within yourself so if we just kind of rewind here and go back to this idea of what we're drawn to as being familiar and what we already know, it doesn't have to be what we like. It can be what we hate, but it's what we know. Then we can continue to work through the feelings, whatever is happening inside us and nurturing that part of us because it's a young child, right? It's a very young part of us that needs to know we're safe, that we're enough, and that this isn't okay, that we don't need to keep going to try to mend this. And so I want to give just one more thing here because this is a really important thing that I think people don't understand. When you are drawn to somebody who is toxic for you, you're not drawn to them because you want to self-sabotage. You're drawn to them because your inner child is trying to find redemption, is trying to have this time that person show up and make you feel like you're enough and tell you that they love you and that they'll never leave you and that this is going to work and that you are worthy of love and acceptance. That part of you is trying to rewrite the old narrative. And so part of healing is learning that you don't need to rewrite that narrative. You're no longer in that narrative and that you get to create your own narrative.
Chantal, I love that. So powerful.
I'm very passionate about this stuff. It's how, and this is all based in neuroscience. This is literally how our brain functions. And there's been tons of research done on this. So our inner child is actually a real thing. It's a very old neural patterning in the brain that gets activated by what's happening in our present life that takes us back into this very old narrative that we get stuck in, where we're not enough, where we have to work so hard for love, where we don't feel deserving of love. And that's understanding that that's a very sad past narrative that we don't have to live anymore. And then it's learning, okay, what do I actually need now? If I'm going to treat myself as someone worthy of love, someone who's worthy of the things that I actually need and want in my life, and who has capacity, right? Like I am someone capable and deserving of those things, then what are the kind of people that I need in my life? What are the things that I need in my life? And then working towards operating from that place of seeking those things out. Healthy boundaries, right? Healthy people who can offer you back something. There's reciprocity. They care about you. They show that they care about you, and they treat you with respect and care.
So powerful. I hope you ladies are listening out there. And if you like this podcast, do me a favor. Make sure you share it with others who could benefit from this. All right, moving on.
Yeah.
Self-compassion. Let's talk a little about self-compassion. Where does this play into it all?
Well, at the root, we now know, how many studies have been done? Kristen Neff, a huge teacher of mine, huge. Paul Gilbert, with compassion-focused therapy. We now know that self-compassion, through hundreds and hundreds of research studies, is the only way to heal. We can't heal by shaming ourselves forward, but we tend to think that self-compassion will make us complacent or lazy, and so I think that's the huge part of healing, is actually learning to have understanding for ourselves, right? And second off, learning to validate our experiences, right? So recognizing this is hard for me, learning to validate, like, this makes sense that I'm feeling this way, and then learning to offer to ourselves what we would to a good friend if this were their situation. That this is the place from which we get to grow and change. And without it, we can't. Shame literally stops the brain from being able to produce anything new. We just get stuck in the patterns we already know, which is why self-esteem is such a beast, right? When we're stuck in a shame pool, we can't shift or change. We literally feel stuck because we are stuck. And we have this internal chaos that we're constantly living in that then plays out in our outer world and our relationships. Yeah.
Love it. When you mention trauma, this goes back to trauma, the low self-esteem. Is it important? And I don't want to put you on the spot for, this is general information. We are not doing individual therapy. Is it important to reflect on that, who it was in the past that, I was going to say, that made you feel that way, but it's really not making you were allowed to feel that way somehow by this relationship with that person. Do you think it's important to go back and relive this, like look deeper into this, or just know that it happened? And
that's a really good question, right? Anything that we need to look at is showing up as a set of symptoms in the present. Janina Fisher will say that really, really clearly. She's one of my wonderful teachers, and I love to just name the people and not come out like this is all my words, because those are her words and I love it. But it's also, we experience these set of symptoms, and they are there. And so oftentimes the narratives that are playing for us over and over again, whether it's in our subconscious, whether we just suddenly brace, or when we start tuning into the body, this stuff will all start to unfold, right? That's the whole beauty and sort of understanding nervous system dysregulation, right? Your body has all these ways that it's learned when we don't feel safe to respond, these trauma responses we go through. And people pleasing is one of them. Shutting down is another one. And when we learn to kind of go in, sometimes these memories, these things will come up, and working through them can be really helpful. Like parts work, for instance, I love it goes back in the past. So internal family systems, which is one of the main therapies that I absolutely love. And it's been, my program's very heavily based in parts work. It just understands different parts of ourselves, right? And understanding that when you're going back to kind of visit these very young parts within yourself, sometimes what can be really healing is just imagining being able to stand up for younger you in the way that you couldn't. And then imagine taking that younger you out of that past reel that's so harmful and hurtful, and taking that little child into your present with you where you get to nurture. Like I nurture my little Chantal all the time. Like she lives with me instead of having her replaying stuff from the past. And I think that for me was the greatest piece of my own healing, was learning that I don't need to live in that past narrative, and using that visualization of caring for my younger child is really powerful.
Such a great episode. Thank you.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Talking about a holistic approach. We spoke prior to the podcast. You're all about a holistic approach. Can we speak a little about that?
Yeah, for sure. I think when I speak from a therapy perspective, holistic, obviously there's other areas of your life, right? Treating things through self-care, but from literally a holistic therapeutic approach, it means, I think there's this false assumption that talk therapy is just talking about how we think, talking about how we feel. There's actually harm in just talking about things, because it can actually stop us from working through the emotions of it. That can be a very protective part for many of us, this sort of intellectualizing part that can talk through things instead of allowing ourselves to heal through feeling that internal chaos and learning how to feel safe in our bodies, which is all what self-esteem and trauma is really about. And so a holistic approach means also addressing the thoughts, addressing the feelings, learning to recognize these different parts of myself, this part that feels not enough, the many different parts that feel not enough, learning to understand my nervous system, how that works so that I can learn how to soothe myself and bring myself to a place of grounding, understanding that my body has wisdom to it and it's giving me messages all the time. And that's powerful. We don't need to judge that. We don't need to shame ourselves for that. We want to learn and learn to learn through our bodies, and then understanding the dynamics in our relationships, how safe we feel with other people, what gets in the way of that. And when you learn to approach all these things, then you take an integrative approach to therapy, where this is where people really start to see the healing. And so that's sort of where my program is really about. It's addressing all of those different things.
Talking about your program, how would people get a hold of you? How do they learn more about your program?
Well, lovely. Thank you. The first step would be to follow me on social media. So I'm at Chantal Wade Therapy. And maybe you can share the link on that. That would be my page, where I have lots of, info and posts that I share. And through there, if someone's interested, that they could send me a little DM. And there's lots of prompts for people to send me DMs. Once a week or so, I'll say, if you're interested, send me a DM. And then I do a free discovery call with anyone who's interested in my program to talk more and see if it's a good fit.
Yeah. This will be in the show notes, Chantal's Instagram and social media. But just so that you guys know, it's spelled out ChantalWade, therapy. So go find her on Instagram. It's been a wonderful talk. You can also find her on her website at chantalwadetherapy.com. Chantal, it has been a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you.
Thank you
for sharing all your expertise. I'm so appreciative of this podcast, that it goes out and it helps others. And the reason why the podcast is a top podcast is because I have speakers like you come in that share their wisdom. Thank you.
Bless you. Thank you so much. Thank you.